All right, for years and years, people have told me I should have a podcast or a television show, or my wife and I should have a television show, or we should have a podcast, but I just don't understand where the time is between family, between posting to all the channels, between DJing, working, trying to enjoy life in between. It just all builds up, and I just have really struggled to find the time. So, can I start a podcast? I don't know. Instead of actually starting one, I came up with a new concept, and I'm pretty excited to share it with you guys. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about why this new format works for me. I'm going to talk about the flexibility of being able to use this concept rather than a traditional concept or a traditional podcast, and why that allows me to expand even further. And lastly, I'm going to talk about my partner in this series, the famed ChatGPT, and how it's going to help me develop, how it's already helped me develop, how it helps my workflow, and also how it's going to be very useful in this series itself and help me grow and change the way I talk on YouTube in this series. So I'm super excited to talk about it. Let's get right into it. So the journey's been a while. I've been, again, at this for 10 plus years. I started out on YouTube just by throwing stuff at the wall. I decided to just pick up my GoPro once and vlog. Actually, I didn't have a GoPro, I had a phone. So I started with the phone. I was just kind of vlogging a trip of ours, but then I would get calls during it and that would get interrupted, and I would take the call, or the text would stop the video because it was early iPhone days. So I started carrying another phone on a gimbal, and I'd have my phone and another phone. Then I moved to GoPro and just kept going, but I was just trying to figure out what to do. And I had so many talks with my manager and business partner at the time about how to grow my channel and what I should be focused on. And so many people, when they're strategizing around YouTube or content in general, they say pick a lane, stick in it, grow it, you'll succeed being great at reviews or great at talking about financial advice or fashion advice. I'm just quite the opposite. I've been kind of a wide array of things my whole time on Instagram, on social media, on this. I just don't like being pigeonholed. I feel it's limiting. And although, yes, you can achieve great success talking about one thing, reviewing, opening boxes, or whatever it may be, for me, it's just like, if you're not happy doing it, then that's not the work you want to be doing, especially when you're working for yourself. I want to feel engaged and enlightened to do things every day. So by way of that, I need to be happy and just doing other things. I can't just be doing one thing. So that has been a harder way to tackle the business, but it's what works for me. So when I looked at doing this new series, which is essentially a podcast without having a podcast, I wanted it to be a little wide rather than just, it's a straight interview series where I talk to someone about why they've succeeded in business and try and find points through it, or like fatherhood, etc. This allows me to just go even wider, so I'm super excited about it. That being said, we did get close to signing a podcast deal right before COVID. We were talking to a friend of mine, shout out Nick Panama, who had a full podcast agency going, and we got pretty close about concepting kind of this cool series, which it never took off, but I thought it'd be fun. I hadn't really seen it before. It was essentially like a reality show, but via podcast. So here are these like thrillers or horror stories or documentaries all through podcasts, but there's no real reality show happening. So that was our idea, and we were going to just be recording ourselves all the time, then someone would chop it up, edit it, and you'd find the storyline through that, and you'd kind of just be following along in an audio capacity of the series of our lives, and then you could back channel it into YouTube and Instagram and kind of catch up with all the details that you saw, so you could visually put together, stitch together the story you were hearing online. So that was the concept, and we were really excited about it. And then I think the agency went down, or he left or something, so it never went anywhere. We never even took it to anyone else, which happens and is fine. So it's, there's all these ideas that continually bubble up. It's kind of what you do with them. But that was a learning experience. We went down the path, looked at contracts, understood what it would take, everything, but it just never saw the light of day. But I still always wanted to do a podcast or something like this. So this is super exciting for me because it allows me to do a version of it without doing it. Confusing, but you're gonna get it as we go along. So let's talk about this format and why it works for me. This episode is about how I'm building the series, and the series is called If I Had a Podcast, which again, I don't. But if I did, I would talk about why I don't have a podcast, which I'm doing. Why does this format work for me? Again, it doesn't pigeonhole me. I think what's beautiful about this is it can allow me to have other people in my series or my footage or my vlogs. Right now, besides my family, not a lot of people want to be in it. My mom doesn't even want to be in it. She's always like, I don't look good on this. I don't want to, and people love when she's in it as far as the comments and stuff, but it's not comfortable for her. So I just avoid putting her in it because I don't want to make her feel uncomfortable. I don't want her to feel uncomfortable. I don't want to feel uncomfortable putting her in it if she doesn't want to be in it, etc. I'm also know a lot of great people throughout life in the world and just walks of life. I've met all these interesting people. I've never had a reason for them to kind of be on my social media. I'm not like, oh, I met Jay-Z, I'm gonna post a picture of me and him. Like, that's never been my angle on social, and especially interviewing. I don't have a reason to ask anyone something. So I feel like this shall it go the way I want it to, and I'm going to push it to, will give me a reason to bring other people in, whether it's in an interview capacity, whether it's in a storytelling capacity, I'm not sure. That's why I like the open format of it. It's just like DJing. I was an open format DJ, and that's funny, I'm just realizing this right now, but I didn't like the constraints of like just playing house music or just playing rap or just playing pop. I wanted to blend them all together. So I guess that's essentially what I'm doing here. So this is just hitting me as I talk about it, but pretty interesting to think about how you take all the things you've learned and just repackage, repurpose into a new growth sector for yourself. So I think that's where I'm headed, which I'm excited to just have like no niche. If I had a podcast, which I don't, it might be this, and there's no niche. So expect anything. It could be outside. I could be jogging during a podcast. We could be canoeing. I could be skiing, chairlift, full vlog episode that feels like a podcast, but I'm skiing the whole time. Due to technology, we got these mics. We have this camera over here that's mobile, this one that's more static. We can be anywhere, everywhere. So I'm super excited to be able to jump further into doing things elsewhere. The grocery store, we could be shopping with a chef and talking about his career. I don't know. It's kind of wide open. The goal really is just to grow and evolve my career because I love storytelling. I love stitching together, directing mini series for our family and having the memories of that. Again, I've said it many times before. If no one watches, totally fine. Not really the goal there. The goal is to get more viewership and more engagement because it is a revenue source, but also it brings a lot of opportunities. Sponsored series, as you see through Squarespace, has been a longtime partner of mine on the vlogs and just allows people to understand us more. So the goal of this is 1, viewership, 2, more subscribers, 3, ad revenue to grow from the channel, but 4, even more so, just finding interesting ways to be engaged with this platform myself that allows me to be inspired to keep creating and keep growing. I think that is the top peak of interest for me and allows me to learn more as I go. Like even just setting this whole setup up today looks insane. There's cords everywhere and stuff, but it's part of the growth factor of, taking something on and putting it out there in the world and seeing what works and what doesn't. I'm sure my setup is going to get cleaner and easier and more understandable from many levels, but that's part of the fun. It's engaging with everyone, creating the conversations with someone in an analog space with me or digitally. This could lead to more newsletter, more forum, chat channels. I don't know. I'm just excited to see where it goes, and I don't want to set certain goals knowing that's the limit. I like to keep it open-ended, as you can see with this whole thing. You're kind of getting a little insight into how my mind works. The next part I want to talk about is when I sat down thinking about creating this series of If I Had a Podcast, which again, I don't. But if I did, who would be my partner in this podcast? Is it just me? If you watched the last vlog I put out about how to be a dad in 2025, it was a struggle for me to sit here and talk and conceptually come up with 4 relevant, real points that I wanted to get behind. I had them and then I changed them while I was on the fly and wanted them to be better. And then I was like, cross-analyzing myself as I was speaking. It's a lot, and there's no one to bounce ideas off or get more energy from during conversation, like talking to so-and-so and feeding off them. And the way my brain really works is things get pulled out of my brain from engaging in conversation, and it's hard when it's just you. I'm not Gary Vee, for instance. The guy could just talk for 5 days and you hear tons of great bits and pieces of advice and kind of change the way you think. But I just don't find that I have that ability. So that's where AI comes in, and that's where I'm really excited to use current technology. And when I'm structuring this as like, oh, let me go to ChatGPT and really lean into it as I use it every day anyway, and say like, hey, I have a new series. So, okay, another vertical I want to integrate in my brand. Can you act as a brand strategist and social media consultant to help me form the following, please? I've had a YouTube channel for over 10 years. I've been posting day in the life, family content, blah, blah, blah. The concept of a podcast has been toyed around, but I just can't imagine taking on another vertical, but mentally birthed a new concept. I have a series on my YouTube called If I Had a Podcast, which I feel will not only allow me to sit down and film a vlog an episode under 2 hours, but also give me some structure towards more formal concept, leaving it open for a lot of topics and coverage and not getting niched down. That's the impetus of all this. And I think it's cool. And you know what they wrote back, or ChatGPT wrote back, this is a brilliant concept. Whether it is or isn't, they're motivating you to keep going further. It's motivating you to keep going further, which I love. So then it broke down my approach and format, potential topics, which I'm into right now. Number one, why I'll never start a podcast, but this is close enough. Then I said, perfect, that's exactly what I was looking for. Let's work on these topics, but let's start with episode 1. Can you build out structure and questions looking to be approximately 45 minutes? It did that for me. So now I'm into the AI content creation of it. So just giving you that little bit so you understand that I'm gonna be using this tool, and I actually think it's awesome to use this tool and make ChatGPT my co-host, because I really do feel it's gonna be conversational at a certain point, and you'll just be able to talk and it will listen and reformat questions back to you. And I will actually have a virtual host working with me, which is pushing the limits of, or pushing the evolution, not the limits, I'm sure the limits go way further, pushing the evolution of ChatGPT and where we're headed, and using it as my co-host. And maybe I'll have an avatar sitting with me, or a small bird on my shoulder that talks, I don't know, it could be anything. But I'm excited to grow with AI and with the platform, because I think it'll just make for a more interesting experience, because again, I just struggle myself to format questions and stick to those, which a podcast, again, is just supposed to be a little more free-flowing. But again, this isn't a podcast. So I'm using AI to help me structure everything and grow it and ideate around more concepts. And I'm really excited about that. And I think it will help me make the content better, because it'll just allow, like, it understands a hook at the start, it understands a body, it understands where it's to go, and understands a conclusion. Where sometimes I listen to a podcast and I'm like, oh, it's just like blurting out things and going nowhere. So this is super interesting to me to help me format it. So as we grow, you know, we're gonna get into more concepts, more ideas. I'm gonna keep it open-ended. I wanna have some guests on the show. I'm not sure who those are gonna be. Obviously, I could say my family members will be here. I think it'd be so fun to like do a podcast with Claude or do a podcast with Preston and just see what comes out of them and what they say. It'd be so funny. Definitely gonna do a bunch with my wife along the way, because she has so much to share on so many sides of the spectrum, and just some of the interesting people throughout my life, or family, or, you know, home organizers, or design directors, whatever it may be. I'm excited to grow into those. I think things people ask me about, which I don't generally talk about, I feel like I might be able to do that a little better here, like the business of being an influencer, and how I look at it, and how I, you know, structure deals or create content or evolve within the space and find my angles and holes to fill that allow me to monetize my content, or why do it just for fun, or, you know, how hard it is to work towards certain levels. I think there's a way to do that. I think I'd love to talk about building my own brand, Fallis Studios, how hard it is to build a brand, how bad I am at focusing on building it and not putting it third string, not even second string. I just like shove it behind when really it should be at the forefront. But the tools I use to build it, how I source my items, how I distribute them, market them, there's all sorts of things to talk about there, which I think are awesome. Money management, real estate. You know, I put up some home tours, they do really well. People love to comment on, like, I mean, I did the Caleb, how much you pay for rent, and talked about our mortgage payment, which actually I rounded up just by $50, nothing crazy. But people were like appalled. First of all, a lot of people didn't even understand it's not rent, that's an actual mortgage. And anyway, just the thing hit like 130 million views now or something. So obviously you're gonna get an array of comments and questions. And that's another episode I could do. How do you deal with social media and how you deal with negative comments on social media? Do you read everything? Do you answer every message? Do you see every message? Do you see the forums? Do you not? Do you, how does that, I mean, I could talk about that for a full hour, but it's kind of endless, and I just think it's awesome, and I'm super excited to be sharing this aspect with you. Again, I don't have to be sitting right here, which is just so awesome. So I can take this camera and we could go, and I could just bring you with me and show you the world through this lens, which is a whole, on the fly lens, and like, look, this is how I'm filming a podcast, and talking about travel hacks, airports, interviewing someone along the way, people who hired us for the job. Why did you hire us? Let's sit down for 45 minutes and talk about how they evolved into their role and how they found us and what was interesting about us versus other people. I think all these things are super cool and fun and awesome to talk about. So I'm just excited. This is my new series on my YouTube channel called If I Had a Podcast. Please subscribe if you think this is interesting, if you have ideas of what you want to hear me talk about, if you want to just dive in further, if you think you should be on this series, I'd love to hear why. So you can leave it in the comments, or you can email me at hello@brendanfallis.com. And I'm super open to growth. As you can see, I just want to evolve. I want to create meaningful conversations. I want to educate. I want to find out more what I know and what I can share, and hear it back and just keep growing without having a podcast. All in all, growth is important. So thank you for being here on this channel, taking the time to watch. I look forward to more of it with you.